So good morning, everyone. It's 8 o'clock. I'd like to call the November 14th Finance Committee meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Member Cahill, Member Chaplin,
Here.
Member Childress, Member Covert, Member Desart, Member Eckhoff, Member Evans, here, Member Galassi, Member Garcia, Member Guston, Member Krajewski, Member LaPlante, Member Ozog, Member Rutledge, Member Schwarzy, Member Tornatori, Member Yu, Member Zay.
Okay, we have a quorum. Do we have any public comment this morning? Any public comment? No public comment. We move on to Chairwoman's remarks. I'd like to welcome the representatives from Safe Harbor here today. They're in our audience and they're here to answer any questions if we have them. With that, we're going to move on to the approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion on 23/35/99 Finance Committee regular meeting from October 24th, 2023. I had a motion by Member Guston, a second by Member Rutledge. Any corrections or changes to the minutes? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. We're going to move on to budget transfers. Can I have a motion on 23/36/01 transfer of funds from part-time help, salaries and wage adjustments, and to regular salaries and benefit payments, the amount of $32,734 to cover salaries for the remainder of the year and shortage and benefit payment account for the county recorder. I had a motion by Member Rutledge and a second by Member Galassi. Okay, any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none. Member Krajewski?
I just had one, because this is going from part-time to the regular salaries, correct? And isn't there several openings in that department? And then is it, so they should have money already there, but is it just because we didn't fund it, it's in contingencies?
Do we have somebody from the recorder's office that can address
Or
this?
Jeff?
Or Jeff? I think.
I mean, there was like 5 or 8 open positions there, so.
For Jeff on this.
Okay, yeah, Jeff.
No, I'm joking.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
So you got like 5 or 8 open positions, were they just not funded? Is that?
Not in dock storage. We're pretty much fully funded in dock storage. So it happens. We came up.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion carries. Can I have a motion? Oh, we do have Member Childress that would like to participate remotely. So a physical quorum of members is present. I'll entertain a motion to permit those members not physically present due to personal illness or disability, employment purposes, or for the business of the board or family or other emergency to participate by video conference. I had a motion by Member Tornatori, second by Member Garcia. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, welcome, Member Childress.
Motion to reconsider the last one?
Thank you.
Do you want a motion to reconsider the?
Sure, let them vote on it.
Member Childress, do you want us to have a motion to reconsider that first item so you can vote on it?
Yes.
Okay, can we have a motion to reconsider? Member Krajewski motion, Member Galassi second. All those in favor on the motion to reconsider?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve
So moved.
23/36/01? Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Ozog. Any discussion?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. We move on to, can I have a motion on 23/36/02 transfer of funds from contingencies
So moved.
and salary wage adjustments to regular salaries and employee medical and hospital insurance in the amount of $63,628 to cover remaining estimated expenses for year 2023 due in part to increase of 4% and 2% in salaries for state attorney's office. I had a motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Galassi. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Can I have a motion on 23/36/79 transfer of funds from operating supplies and materials to furnish furniture, machine equipment, small value, and other professional services to contingencies, the amount of $144,668 to move unused school district fund back to contingencies. Regional Office of Education. I had a motion. Who made that motion? Member Guston, second by Member Rutledge. Any discussion on this item? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And can I have a motion on 233690, transfer of funds from transfer out of Health Department to regular salaries? I am employee share IMRF and employee share Social Security in the amount of $174,000 to realign ARPA 2023 budget to transfer for personnel for ARPA funded employees across all departments due to increase in work on capital projects. I had a motion by Member Cahill, second by Member Galassi. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And finally, can I have a motion on 233603 budget transfers 11/14/2023 from various companies and accounting units? Motion by Member Garcia, second by Member Galassi. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We move on to procurement requisitions, and I'll call on Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on 23-3353, recommendation for approval of a contract purchase order to Wex Health Inc. for our flexible spending account services.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
You move on FIP 0024-23, approval of contract purchase order to Corvell Corporation for third-party administrative services.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Guston. Any discussion? Member Krajewski.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe some future point, we could have them come in and not them or HR talk about work comp. I know I had a complaint a year ago from the sheriff's office about some of the work comp and the investigations that were going on with regards to that. So I did have a meeting with HR, sheriffs, Corval, et cetera, and they explained it seemed to be getting better over the last month or couple of years. And then went to one person and then it made a comment that they had 26 work comp claims so far here. So again, I was still a little confused as how much we're doing on the investigations on work comp with Corval. It seemed like it was getting better, but maybe we could get them or HR in front of us. And I would just like something from the people who deal with it, how they feel we're doing the work comp.
Yeah, we can arrange that. Thank you, Member Krajewski. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 0019-23, recommendation for the issuance of a contract purchase order to Alliant Insurance Services, Inc. for cyber liability insurance.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 0020-23, recommendation for issuance of a contract purchase order to Alliant Insurance Services to provide employment practice liability insurance.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 0021-23, recommendation issuance of a contract purchase order to Alliant Insurance Services, Inc. for excess, general, and automobile liability insurance.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIP 0022-23, recommendation for issuance of contract purchase order to Alliant Insurance Services, Inc. to provide property insurance for all our county properties.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you. Last, I move on FIP 0023-23, recommendation for issuance of contract purchase order to Alliant Insurance Services, Inc. to provide our work comp insurance.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Krajewski. We move on to environmental. Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. Good morning, everybody. I move on ENR 0019-23, a recommendation for the approval of a grant agreement between the County of DuPage and Choose DuPage for Choose DuPage to manage sustainable DuPage for the period of December first, 23 through November 30th, 24, for a total amount not to exceed $60,000.
Motion by member Rutledge, second by member Guston or Cahill. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Rutledge. We move on to ETSB, member Schwarzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on ETSR 5623, a resolution approving the county board execution of an intergovernmental agreement on behalf of the Emergency Telephone System Board to grant 911 surcharge funds to the 2 DuPage County Public Safety answering points to be used consistent with state and federal law.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. We're going to move on to Human Services. Now call on member Schwarzy again.
Thank you. I'll move on item HSP 8123, awarding a resolution issued to Healthy Air Heating and Air Inc. to provide furnace repair or replacement, labor and materials for the low income home energy assistance program for the period November 1st, 23 through June 30th, 24 for a contract total amount of $206,008.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Glassy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 8223, awarding resolution issued to Nortec Environmental Inc. to provide furnace repair or replacement, labor and materials for the low income home energy assistance program for the period November 1st, 23 through June 30th, 24 for a contract total of $206,008.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 8323, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Northwestern Medicine Regional Medical Group, Dr. Mile for professional services for a medical director for the DuPage Care Center for the period December 1st, 23 through November 30th, 24 for a contract amount not to exceed $36,000.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 8423, a recommendation for approval of a contract purchase order to Medline Industries, Inc. to furnish and deliver disposable isolation gowns for the DuPage Care Center for the period November 15th, 23 through November 14th, 24 for a contract total amount not to exceed $37,912.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I'll move on HSP 8523, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Cisco Chicago Inc. for the primary food supplies and chemicals for the DuPage Care Center for the period December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 for a total contract amount not to exceed $1,246,500.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you. I move on HSP 8623, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Cimbria Rehab Inc. for community wellness partner for the wellness center staffing and management for outpatient center at the DuPage Care Center for the period December 1st, 23 through November 30th of 24 for a contract total amount not to exceed $66,000.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Schwarzy.
Finally, I'll move on HSP 8723, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Cimbria Rehab Inc. to provide physical, occupational, speech, and respiratory therapy and consulting services for the DuPage Care Center for the period December 1st, 23 through November 30th of 24 for a contract total amount not to exceed $1 million.
Motion by member Schwarzy, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Schwarzy. We will move on to JPS, member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on JPS CO 000723, amendment to purchase order 60961 serve issued to Public Safety Direct for the repairs and maintenance of existing sheriff's vehicles and upfitting of the new sheriff's vehicles to increase the encumbrance in the amount of $14,000, resulting in a new contract total amount not to exceed $740,816.70.
Motion by member Evans, second by member Zay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move on JPSP 006723, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Strikers Inc. for the purchase of ballistic and stab resistant armor for the deputies for the period of December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 for a contract total not to exceed $165,000.
Motion by member Evans, second by member Cahill. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Evans. We move on to Public Works, member Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I move to approve FMP 008623, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Valdez Supply to furnish and deliver restroom tissue and paper towels to the judicial office facility, JTK Administration Building, and the jail on a monthly basis and as needed for the Power Plant Children's Center, Office of Emergency Management, and the Coroner's Office for Facilities Management for the period of December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2024, for a total contract amount not to exceed $123,397.52.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Garcia.
I motion to approve FMP 008723, recommendation for the approval of agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and Gerke Technology Group, Inc. for professional water treatment consulting and management services for facilities management for the 4-year period of December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2027, for a contract total amount not to exceed $116,973.60.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Zay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Garcia. Okay, can we please have the record reflect member Zay leaving?
Yeah, I motion to approve PWP 004423, recommendation for the approval of agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and Christopher B. Burke Engineering Limited for on-call professional engineering services for water system design and construction management and Lake Michigan water allocation for various regions around DuPage County for Public Works for the period of November 14, 2023 to November 30th, 2026, for a total contract amount not to exceed $95,000.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Galassi. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And
Member
motion to,
Garcia.
thank you. I motion to approve PWP 004523, recommendation for the approval of an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and Fair Graham for on-call professional engineering services on an as-needed basis for wastewater treatment, process control, and infrastructure for the period of November 14th, 2023 to November 30th, 2025, for a total contract amount not to exceed $95,000.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Garcia.
I motion to approve PWP 004623, recommendation for the approval of an agreement between the County of DuPage, Illinois, and Trotter and Associates, Inc. for on-call professional engineering services on an as-needed basis for wastewater treatment plant permit reporting for Public Works for a period of November 14th, 2023 to November 30th, 2025, for a total contract amount not to exceed $95,000.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Member Garcia.
I motion to approve PWR 000423, recommendation to approve the water purchase and sale agreement between the DuPage Water Commission and the County of DuPage, Illinois. First reading.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Zay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Garcia.
And finally, I motion to approve PWR 000523, recommendation for the concurrence of an extension of the water supply contract between the DuPage Water Commission and the City of Chicago. Recommendation to approve the water purchase and sale agreement between the DuPage Water Commission and the County of DuPage, Illinois.
Motion by member Garcia, second by member Zay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Garcia. We move on to stormwater. Member Zay.
Morning, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 6523, approval of a contract issued to Scares for professional education services for stormwater management. Period of December 1st to November 31st, amount not to exceed $235,000, $85,000 for stormwater, and $150,000 for environmental.
Motion by member Zay, second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 6623, recommendation to enter into a joint funding agreement between the County of DuPage and the United States Department of Interior, USGS, for water resource investigations period of December 1st, 2023, November 30th, 2024. The amount not to exceed $373,000. The USGS shall contribute $167,000 $1,600.
Motion by member Zay, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 6723. Approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the county of DuPage and Naperville Township for Green Acres Drainage Project. The amount not to exceed $45,000. This is an ARPA item.
I have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Madam Chair, I move on SMP 6823. Enter an intergovernmental agreement between the county of DuPage and Naperville Township for Arrow Estates Drainage Project. The amount not to exceed $95,000.
Motion. Motion by member Zay, second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 6923. Approval of contract issued to V3 Construction Group for Main Street Basin Flood Control Project for Stormwater Management. The amount not to exceed $2,199,227.00 per lowest responsible bid.
Motion by member Zay, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 7023. Approval of a contract issued to Earthworks Land Improvement and Development for on-call construction for stormwater management for contract not to exceed $2,222,744 per lowest responsible bid. This is the first option to renew.
Motion by member Zay, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on SMP 7123. Contract issued to Water Well Solutions Illinois to furnish all equipment, labor, materials, and tools to supervise and necessary for cleaning at the Wooddale Itasca Flood Control Facility. Amount not to exceed $151,190,000 per lowest responsible bid.
I have a motion by member Zay, a second by member Schwarzy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member
Thank you,
Zay.
Madam Chair.
We move on to technology. Member Yu is not here. Member Eckhoff, you'll be taking this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd move approval of TEP 70-23, recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order of CDWG Inc. for the purchase of laptops, desktops, monitors, and docking stations for information technology for the period November 15, 2023 through November 30, 2024 for a contract total amount of $148,610.70.
Have a motion by member Eckhoff, second by member Rutledge. Any discussion? Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I noticed on this cooperation agreement, it expired on October 31st. Has this been extended? It has? Okay, you don't have to come up. I want to make, it said there's an option to extend, so I just want to make sure it's extended. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, member Zay. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
Thank you. I'd move approval of TEP 71-23, recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order of BDO USA Solutions Provider LLC for the annual software maintenance of FireEye security software. Contract covers the period December 10, 2023 through December 9, 2024 for a total amount of $165,113.
Motion by member Eckhoff, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
I think I'd move approval of TEP 72-23, recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order to Imaging Systems, Inc. doing business as Integrated Document Technologies for the annual Highland and Capsus software assurance maintenance of imaging systems for the supervisor of assessments, treasurer, family center, coroner, and county clerk, paid by the information technology for the period of January 1, 2024 through January 31, 2025 for a contract purchase total amount of $63,300.76.
Motion by member Eckhoff, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries. Member Eckhoff.
I think I would move approval of TEP 73-23, recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order to IBM Corporation for the purchase of program product software licenses for IBM ZOS and software support and maintenance for BC12Z system server for information technology for the period December 1, 2023 through November 30, 2024 for a total contract amount of $171.72.
Have a motion by member Eckhoff, a second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Eckhoff. We move on to transportation. We have member Ozog.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I move for approval of 3590 rescission of local public agency agreement DTR 007923 and approval of revised agreement between the County of DuPage and the Illinois Department of Transportation, County Highway 9 Lamont Road, 83rd Street to 87th Street, and County Highway 31, 87th Haven Drive to Lamont Road, section 13-00232. Estimated county cost $1,747,782.
Have a motion by member Ozog, a second by member Rutledge. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Ozog?
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Can we please let the record reflect member Zay leaving the room? Okay, go ahead, member Ozog.
Thank you. I move for approval of DTP 010323, local public agency engineering services agreement between the County of DuPage and Christopher B. Burke Engineering for professional preliminary engineering services for the East Branch DuPage River Trail from Illinois 56 Butterfield Road to the Illinois Prairie Path, section 23-0000208 BT for a contract cost not to exceed $1,499,997. Professional services vetted through a qualification-based selection process. County to be reimbursed $1,200,000.
Motion by member Ozog, second by member Galassi. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, go ahead, member. I'm sorry. Second by member LaPlante. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. I move for approval of DTR 009023, joint funding agreement for preliminary engineering between the County of DuPage and the Illinois Department of Transportation for the East Branch DuPage River Trail from Illinois 56 Butterfield Road to the Illinois Prairie Path. County to be reimbursed 80% up to $1,200,000.
Motion by member Ozog, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Ozog?
Thank you. I move for approval of DTR 009123, agreement between the County of DuPage and the City of Aurora for the installation and future maintenance responsibilities of the central signal system. County to be reimbursed net $49,918.66.
Motion by member Ozog, second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Ozog?
Thank you. I move for approval of DTR 009223, agreement between the County of DuPage and the Morton Arboretum for the Illinois Prairie Path Enhancement Project, funded by a grant from Nicor Gas to remove invasive understory growth and replace them with oak trees along a section of the Illinois Prairie Path. County to be reimbursed up to $10,000.
Motion by member Ozog, second by member Guston. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead, member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. Just a quick comment that I'm so pleased to see that we're moving to remove these invasive species because it is impactful on our environment.
Mhm.
And I'll look to do more of that with my environmental committee going forward. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for the comments. Any other comments, questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Ozog.
Thank you.
We move on to finance resolutions. I will call on member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0260-23, acceptance appropriation of the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance grant, $395,280.
Motion by member Krajewski, second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member
Thank you,
Krajewski.
Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0261-23, acceptance appropriation of sustained traffic enforcement program grant, $39,027.
Motion by member Krajewski, second by member Guston. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0264-23, amendment to the grant agreement between the County of DuPage and the Northern Illinois Food Bank for the use of ARPA funds for an increase to the contract total amount and an additional 4 months of funding ARPA items.
Motion by member Krajewski, second by member Guston. Member Zay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, this is not new money, right? This is out of the money that we already allocated for food insecurity.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on
Oh,
FIR
it's the next one, I think. Yeah.
65-23. Resolution for the townships to opt out of the Northern Illinois Food Bank Fresh Produce Program for an additional direct payment ARP item.
Motion by member Krajewski, second by member Schwarzy. Any discussion? Member Guston?
I just have a quick question, maybe staff knows or staff doesn't know. I think I read something in the paper that the townships, Naperville Township, Lyle Township, some other townships are receiving state funding for food and mental health. So is that, or is it only mental health and it's not food? It was in the, oh, it was in the paper. So just, you know, food for thought, if the paper's right or not, I don't know, but I just wanted to put that out there. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Member Desart?
Thank you. I actually had this question in my county board packet, but for this allotment, it's only for Addison, Bloomingdale, and York townships. So I'm wondering what about the other 6 townships?
They're receiving food from the Northern Food Bank.
Okay.
They don't all have
Correct?
food banks.
Right.
The townships that have food pantries were given the option to opt out. Addison and York chose to opt out. Bloomingdale, for other reasons, was not participating in the program, and so they're getting direct payment.
Thanks, Mary.
Okay, any other questions, discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, the motion carries. We move, member Krajewski, please let the record reflect member Rutledge leaving the room. Please proceed, member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FIR 0266-23, authorization to transfer funds from the opioid settlement fund to the DuPage County Health Department, amount not to exceed $850,000.
Motion by member Krajewski, second by member Guston. Any discussion? I have member Desart.
Thank you. I read a fascinating article the weekend, and I don't remember if it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, but it talked about drug use, drug abuse. From the 60s, it was heroin, 70s, it was cocaine. They went down the line, and now, of course, our scourge is opioids. And I know we discussed this just a couple of weeks ago. Bob Berlin was here in the room, and I don't recall a consensus. I know Bob Berlin said the whole, all we have right now, and we could be getting more, excuse me, but all we have right now is $850,000. And since there was no consensus that day when it was just a discussion, I'm just wondering if our health department should get the full amount. I mean, I would love to hear a presentation on the other organizations that deal with the opioid crisis, such as Linden Oaks does a wonderful job. There are a number of other organizations around the county that do a wonderful job. And again, there was no consensus on the Bob Berlin discussion. It was just informational. So I'm just not sure the whole $850,000 should go to one entity, even though it's our entity. Thanks, Nick.
One clarification, the amount of opioid money that we have received already is 2.2 million. So we have 2.2 million in the bank. This would be 850,000 of that 2.2. And I think ultimately over the 10 years, depends on if we get to settlements. I mean, it's going to be, approaching $10 million for the settlement.
And is it possible to have a discussion from some of the other organizations throughout DuPage County that do good work as far as drug abuse? And drug use disorder, I guess is what it's called.
Yeah, I will say we have no additional requests at this time. I do know that opioid settlement money is very strict on how it is utilized, very strict. And even for the health department to use it, obviously they met with the state's attorney who've been involved in the settlement for all of these years. And clearly their use meets the opioid requirement. Many of the other organizations may or may not, but we have no other requests on record right now.
Thank you, Nick. And also, so again, when Bob Berlin spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, there was no consensus. And so I was kind of surprised to see it on the agenda. Are you hearing a consensus that the whole 2.2 million will go to the health department then?
There's
No.
been no discussion for anything other than the 850. So the 850 is the only thing we've had discussions on. The remaining money remains in a dedicated account at the county, receiving interest right now. The board will have to decide how to expend the additional money.
Thank you. And just to be clear, I'm not against this money being used by the health department. I'm just saying that there are other entities throughout the county who might benefit from some money from this opioid allotment. Thank you.
Yeah, come on up, come on.
I would just share that we've been working for over a year to communicate directly with the state. They have an Illinois Opioid Remediation Advisory Board, IORAB. We submitted a proposal to them a year ago with 14 different community partners and the health department, trying to bring $10 million from the state share of this to DuPage. So from the health department perspective, we're kind of working on both levels. We've submitted a proposal to this board for some of the local share. The state also has a lot of money, and we're trying to make sure that our community partners are able to access that as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you. One other question since you're here. I didn't see that
Yeah.
you were here. I know that this is the opioid settlement fund, but I read in that article that I just referenced that methamphetamine deaths and cocaine deaths are on the rise as well. Is this just for opioids or anybody with substance use disorder?
Yeah, although as Nick mentioned, there is pretty prescriptive permitted uses in the settlement agreement, it is broad enough to address substance use disorder more broadly. So they do have some references specific to opioid use disorder, and then they have other references that are more broad to say any co-occurring mental health and substance use disorder service as well.
Interesting. All right. Thank you so much. And again, I'm not against, obviously I'm for whatever we can do to, end the scourge of opioid abuse. I was just thinking we could spread it around the county a little bit better, but thank you so much for answering my question.
Thank you. So I have member Zay and then member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think member Desart brings up a good point that as we start using this money, we should maybe know exactly what we can use it for and not use it for. So if even we don't need a presentation, but either just a memo or something, just kind of spelling out what we can. We know the health department's our lead on this, but it gives us just a better understanding of if we have someone that comes to us and says, hey, I do a recovery, facility, I'd like to, we deal with this, X, Y, and Z. Am I eligible? It'd be nice to know if we can help those people.
Absolutely. We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, member Zay. Member Krajewski.
Yeah, two things. I agree with member Zay. Member Desart brings up a good point here. But I've raised this issue a lot over the last couple of years because our former CFO, Paul Raybeck, had talked about looking at giving out grant monies. And he came from Will County. So he said Will County had a different model where they actually went out and used some of the not-for-profits and people in the community to administer some of the money that came to the county. So again, I think that's something we should be looking at is whether some of these programs can be done better by some of the not-for-profits that are out there with regards to that. I had one question and relates to the last time you guys were up here. We were talking about $800,000. I spoke to Nick yesterday because at that time, Cahill was talking about the investment income. I think he had budgeted $700,000 for this current year, but the accounting guy said that you'd already got $1.5 million, which was $800,000 over budget. So the question I had raised was, if that's true, you got $800,000 already because you're over budget on the investment income. I know, Nick, we spoke yesterday. Adam called me from last night. I didn't get a chance to call back, but is that a true number that you did get 1.5 million investment income? You only budgeted 700 this year. So
yeah,
$800,000 of excess money already this year.
Yeah, I think maybe even a little more than that in terms of that investment return. Yeah, we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we were here was even more than, I think it was close to $1 million, more than we had budgeted.
So if you got that excess already, then why do we even need to give the 800,000?
Sure. Yeah. Well, great question. My answer would be two parts. One, I've talked a little bit with this board and my intention to come back with a full 10-year plan on the financial sustainability associated with this facility. So the short answer is we need all of it. I certainly anticipate that the $1 million plus, it's great, fantastic news. Big thanks to the treasurer for that unexpected return. we certainly intend to apply that to the project downstream. I think the reality for us is when I look 10 years out, we need all of that and then some right now. And we tend to look, the second part is we tend to look at that investment earnings as an extension of the county tax dollar that could be used for different general purposes supporting the project. Whereas the opioid funds are, again, a little bit more narrowly applied to specific uses for this expansion of service.
Yeah, it's all just in the same pot, but it picks up on members A having more of a plan, but I mean, you're looking for 800,000. We're 800,000 over surplus this year in your budget, so you got the 800,000, but yet you want the 800,000 again. You know,
I
I think
understand.
some of us would like to see a better plan and how we're gonna go forward, how we're gonna fund everything. So that's the only question I had. I guess I got my answer. You got 800,000 surplus this year, but yet you want 800,000.
Well, I would just stress that the revenue sources, how they can be used, one of them is more prescribed and the other is less so. So, you know, again, we're going to try to leverage, these are federal dollars from a lawsuit. We're going to try to leverage that first and for the purposes that we can that are aligned with our behavioral health goals, rather than that county tax base. Come back to that, but certainly do plan to apply that as part of the 10-year sustainability plan.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussions on this item? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion carries. We move on to informational, and I will call on Member Krajewski.
Hey, Madam Chair, I move to receive and place on file informational items, A, payment of claims, B, appointments, and C, grant notification, proposal notifications.
I have a motion by Member Krajewski and a second by Member Garcia to receive and place on file items A, B, and C under informational. Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Member Desart.
No discussion. I was just gonna ask, could the representatives from the sheriff's office hang out for a minute? Because I've got some new business to ask you about. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Krajewski. We move on to presentations. So I'm going to have, I'm sorry, appointments. Do you have a question on it?
No, I just have a question. You know, I think we're gonna have a longer presentation here. Can we amend the agenda and take the 11, the family shelter services request first?
Sure.
So
Can we
we're not.
make a motion to amend? Yeah, so members A moves, Member Desart second to amend the motion to flip item 10 and 11. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, we will go on to our item 11,
No,
discuss.
now we gotta vote on it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You good.
Okay, can we have a motion to approve or a motion on discussion item 233691?
So move.
Motion by Members A, second by Member Cahill. Any discussion on this item? It's for discussion, so. Okay, no voting, okay. Okay, so Nick, you want to come on up?
On this item, we'll talk about it during a presentation, but ultimately we're looking for concurrence by the board. And if we have concurrence, we will then, in 2 weeks, you'll see a resolution on the board for consideration.
So do we have any questions on this item? No, do we have Member Desart?
Oh, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say I visited this place a couple of years ago and they do fantastic work.
Yes. So we do have concurrence to move this forward for the next meeting to have place on the agenda. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion, Members A, to move those items. Okay, now we move on to item 10, our presentation. So Jeff and Nick will be doing this, I think. So Jeff, come on up.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Chair Chaplin. As many of you are aware, our fiscal year 2023 budget is going to conclude very shortly on November 30th. Nick and myself wanted to give you a brief update on where the general fund stands as of today and what our projections are for the completion of the fiscal year. I'm going to start out the presentation this morning by reviewing some of our major revenue sources that the board has generally been really interested in. Our debt positions within our general governmental funds, and then take a look at our consolidated income statement in the general fund. Please keep in mind, this presentation is specifically for 2023. Our current fiscal year that we discussed, fiscal year 2024 that we discussed 2 weeks ago, those resolutions were approved by the board, and we are still on track to approve our fiscal 2024 budget at the board meeting in 2 weeks. Okay, so why don't we start out by getting into the presentation, and we'll look at some of our major revenues. The first projection is our sales tax budget. We had a fiscal or a 2023 budget of $131.2 million. And that represents about 57% of our total budget. So it's obviously a very major revenue source. We provided 3 years of actual, current 2023 actual by month. You can see what's been received by month. To date, we've received $112.9 million. Now, under the column 2023, we still have 2 more months to receive, 2 more months of collections for the 2023 fiscal year. If we just meet the budget, we should end up at about $135.5 million. So that's going to put us over budget by about $4.3 million. So there's been a lot of discussion about the economy, inflation, things like that. I'm happy to say that we've held up really well. You know, sales tax keeps exceeding or meeting our budget. And we took some opportunity in 2024 to raise sales tax. I think our budget for 2024 is about a little over 133 million. So we still take a conservative approach, but all in all, you know, this has performed very well. Next slide. Moving on to income tax. This is commonly known as the LGDF fund. We receive a portion of the state income tax through the LGDF fund, and this is distributed to us monthly. We receive this based on our current unincorporated population, which is $95,936. There's 2 elements of the income tax, and that is the corporate rate at 7% and the individual rate at 4.9%. So another revenue source that is really doing well. Obviously, you know, corporations and the employment levels have stayed consistent, and this has generated, you know, a surplus within income tax. We're projecting to be over budget by 1.3 million. We are a little bit under budget when you compare this to 2022 by about $440,000. But all in all, I'd have to say another revenue source that's held up very well. Cannabis tax. This is also a revenue source that we've had a lot of discussions about. The board has traditionally been interested, very interested in cannabis and where we're currently at because it's fairly new. We had a 2023 budget of $3.16 million, and we're projecting to come in a little bit over $90,000. I think our average receipts per month are about 270,000, and that's staying pretty consistent now. So I think we can expect into the future that $3.2 million is a good budget for cannabis. Next slide, please. This is a consolidated income statement of the general fund, and this really gives you a high-level overview of what our financial position is or where we project to end fiscal 23. So I'll start out with revenues on top, and we break this down under revenue and expenses by each of the major categories. Property tax, obviously that we are expecting to receive all of our levy, and we projected that accordingly. We've talked about sales tax. Again, we factored in a projection of $135.5 million. A couple of areas that have fallen a little bit short, but I don't think it's unexpected. Under other taxes, the largest revenue source there is transfer stamps. Because of the housing market and the fall of refinancings and things like that, that revenue source is about $900,000 under budget. And same thing with charges for services. All of the recording fees that are associated with sales, all sales of property throughout the county, that's also fallen a little bit short. I can tell you in our 2024 budget, we've adjusted accordingly to scale back some of those revenues. And we're still presenting a balanced budget for 2024. Fines and forfeits, that is over budget specifically because of the Safety Act. Remember, bond income in the courts did not go away, if you will, until September. So we've received an additional $900,000 in revenue from the posting of bonds. We've talked about investment income. We are over budget, obviously, in investment income. We're projecting $3.2 million, and we had a budget of a little bit under $1.7 million. So all in all on revenue, we are projecting total revenues to be $238,050,032. Our total budget was $234,677,234. On the expenditure side, again, major categories of expenditures, the largest being personnel, a total budget, and this encompasses all of the departments in the general fund. A total budget of $165.6 million. We're projecting to come in a little over $158 million. We've talked a lot about personnel in all of the departments. We continue to be short-staffed. We have about 110 open positions again throughout the county. So not only are salaries under budget, but the corresponding benefits continue to be under budget. Some of our operating expenses, such as commodities and contractual. Last year, you probably remember the supply shortage discussion. So in a lot of the budgets, we factored in higher budgets to make up for the possibility of higher costs for a lot of operating costs that deal with supply chain. That is primarily the reason why we're under budget in a lot of those operating costs within commodities and contractual services. And then everything for the most part has held up pretty well. We're right on track to meet budget and capital and other financing uses. Other financing uses are basically our subsidies or our transfers to such areas as the care center and water that makes up the majority of that. Transfers to our infrastructure funds. A lot of money comes out from the general fund to fund infrastructure, and we hold that money in different funds. So total expenses of $219,109,777. When I subtract our revenues from our expenses, we're coming up with a surplus of $18,940,255. So that's our surplus, our projected surplus for fiscal 2023. I am doing a little bit of a disclaimer. We're still in 2023. December and January will still be recording expenses and receiving revenues for those 2 months. But I think at this point, we have a pretty good projection of where we're going to fall. So that's the status of the general fund. One last slide that I wanted to go over. We've had some questions about debt, and we've stated to the board throughout the year that we have a very limited amount of debt, at least as far as the number of debt positions. So within our general government funds, we have 3 outstanding issues. The 2010 B bonds, those were Build America bonds. Those were issued in 2010 and have a maturity of 2035. We currently have an outstanding balance of $58.9 million. Those bonds were kind of backloaded for the first 7 years. And now, beginning last year, we started paying principal and interest. The annual debt service payment on that is about $7.2 million. The 2016 general obligation refunding bonds was for the courthouse project, issued in 2016, maturing in 2030. We currently have an outstanding balance of about 22.5 million. We levy a property tax to repay the principal and interest on these bonds. That debt service payment annually is $3.6 million. And the last debt issue is the 2017 GO debt certificates, issued in 2017, maturing in 2028, so fairly quickly. We have an outstanding balance of 5.19 million. Now, these bonds were to, I think, remodel the DuPage building. So we loan money via debt certificate to DuPage, and they pay annually the principal and interest on that debt certificate. So that's a very large picture recap of where we are in the general fund. And
You know, can we hold questions till the end of the presentation? Because your questions might be answered as it continues on. So yeah, we can just do that, please.
I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So Jeff got to give the good news for the 18.9. My part of what we're going to do is, okay, we have 18.9. There's other funding sources out there. We've tried to take clues from this board over the past 4 or 5 months about what are spending priorities for the board. And we have some recommendations, some options for your consideration. We're looking for guidance today to know if we're on the right track. So we have a roadmap moving forward with how to do this. So today we're going to talk about 3 main funding sources. Jeff just talked about the 2023 surplus that we have 18.9 million. That's our first one we're going to talk about. If you recall, when the chair gave her budget address in September, at that time we thought there was going to be 13.7. So things have gotten better since the September presentation. So she talked about a 13.7, some ideas for that. That leaves another 5.2 to discuss. The second area of money we're going to discuss are the remaining ARPA funds that are available. The chair recommended 1.5 million. If you remember, that was for food insecurity. So we're talking about the other 325,000. And then the final one that we're going to talk about today, if we have time, is the ARPA investment income that I'm happy to report, thanks to the work of the treasurer and her staff. We have $9.2 million anticipated for ARPA interest, which is far more than we thought previously. You guys, you can see there, you have allocated approximately 2 million of that. The chair recommended allocation of about 5.6 million. If you remember, that's for the small grants for the next 3 years. So that leaves 1.5 million. So we're going to hopefully get through those 3. I will tell you, the first one is the most important because some of those are tied to the 2024 budget. So there are portions of that first one that we do have to have some consideration today. Next slide. So as we look at what we did, how we looked at it and how I urge you to, is that every expenditure we did, obviously, what are the needs we have, but we're trying to focus on down payments on upcoming and already approved obligations to take pressure off future budget years. We're not necessarily, I mean, do we have concerns in 23? No, we have concerns more in 25, 26, and 27. So a lot of the decisions you're going to see in here will take pressures off those budget years. You know, one-time considerations. If we know we have an obligation coming, how do we pay for it? That was kind of what our goal was, and I think we managed that. I will say that what you're going to see is among the 3 different funding sources, certain can't be funded in other buckets, whereas so how we have it in your presentation today, everything's legal, but if you move one to another bucket, it might not be legal, and we can discuss that. So the important thing is, as Jeff mentioned, we've got 2 months before 23 books close out. So we're gonna have two more sales tax data points. A lot of the things that we're talking about today, we're gonna stagger bringing before you. If we get consensus, there are some that we have to bring in 2 weeks, some will bring in December, some will bring in January. But what that does, that gives us the ability, if we see the sales tax taking a dive for some reason in December or January, we're gonna rethink it. We'll be back here in front of you. That we're not gonna spend all of this money in 2 weeks. It's gonna take us 2-3 months to spend all this money. And by that time, we'll have all the data points and we'll see. Next slide. So the first one we're talking about is a 2023 surplus. Go ahead. Are we frozen? I'll go off my sheet if need be. Okay. All right. So if you recall back in September, the chair gave during her budget address, talked about 13.7. 2 of those items have already been approved by this board, both for the sheriff. You can see those at the top. The remaining out of the 13.7 are in the yellow box that you see up there. And just to go over them real quick, the 3 million for facilities management 2024 capital. That is the run rate, the normal run rate needed for facilities management. That's not building any big projects. That's simply taking care of our escalators, elevators, what we already have in place. That is what we need. That needs to be that's one we need direction on, because that is not in the 2024 budget. That relieves pressure. The next one we talked about was an additional 2.5 million for the housing solutions program, bringing that up to a total of 5 million. The next one that she recommended was an additional 2 million in a tort liability fund. The next one would be another one, 800,000 for the stormwater. That was pulled out of the 2024 budget. And that capital need is there. So that's another one we need to make sure we have direction on today. Next one, as you recall, as anybody can see, as you're coming into work, animal services is well on their way for their expansion. The cost of that project, I mean, it's the same scope we've had, but the cost of the project's gone up because of the cost of construction. They are doing some, they're doing substantial fundraising, but this is additional 500,000 to help them toward that. There's an additional request for 500,000 for the Willbrook Corner sidewalk design. And that will not only sidewalk, but some lighting. And if approved, that would then go into transportation and they would work that design, get that designed, and then attempt to find maybe some grant funding out there, other funding sources. Another item that the chair recommended was an additional 500,000 toward reserves. That's kind of a nod toward the unknown for the economic future. What's happening with sales tax? It's just, we do have substantial reserves, but we are really, really reliant on sales tax. And that gives just a very conservative approach. And the final one that the chair recommended was the HVAC system in this building. This is one I'll have a special slide on. This is going to be paid for through 3 different funding sources, but the first part is 2.2 million out of the surplus. We will talk a lot more about the HVAC. So because certain things came in a little bit cheaper than originally intended, the chair is recommending 13.4 million. That's what you see in yellow. That leaves 5.46 million to have more discussion. Next slide. So first one we talked about, the chair recommending 500,000. I'm not going to read all of this, but you can see where we sit with our general fund right now. At the end of 22, we have 103.3 million. If we do nothing with this surplus, we'll go to 122.2. It automatically sweeps into the general fund reserves. That would take us up to 56%. That is not our recommendation. So our recommendation with the additional 500,000, it goes to 103.8, which would be 42.8% of the 2024 fund balance. We would recommend another 500,000 going in reserves for $1 million total. So it would be 500,000 that the chair has recommended plus 500 out of the additional reserves for $1 million total. We would have a fund balance of 43% of 104.3. Next slide. So the chair recommended a tort liability addition of $2 million. This is one of those that it's an investment in our future. We know. We recommend, given their surplus level, that we consider another 500,000 in tort liability to protect us for the unknown in the future. You can see all the uses for tort liability. So that would be a total of 2.5 million added to tort liability and out of the 2023 surplus. Once again, conservative approach, planning for the unknown in the future. Next slide. Division of Transportation. If you recall, last year was the first year that we made an addition to Division of Transportation out of the RTA. We would recommend that we continue that trend with another 2 million transferred Division of Transportation to be utilized, emphasizing safety, congestion relief, pedestrian and bicycle facilities. But, that comes out of, if you recall, the county utilizes their entire RTA for public safety, and that changed last year. We're continuing that trend with this 2 million. Next slide. We've had a lot of discussion. This is a small item, but I think it's an important item that we heard from the board, that to outfit the sheriff with the mobile road scales for overweight vehicles out there. It's like I said, we get 2 sets of scales for 22,500. They are trained. They have the staff over there already trained, and they will utilize them right away. And this will be a new revenue source to the county. And the tickets are substantial. So 22,500 is a fairly small one. Next slide. A little bit bigger here. This is the sheriff's #1 funding priority that, in talking to them, across the board. Their original camera system over there dates back to it's piecemeal throughout, but some of the older cameras you can see in the bottom there date back to the early 1990s. They have 223 existing cameras. There's blind spots over there. The cameras are old technology. It doesn't have the pan and tilt and zoom. And so #1 priority, we've been working with them for a little while on this one. We actually have hard quotes on this, and that's a $1.8 million request. This would completely fund a new camera system within the jail, the operating system, everything. It would be inside, outside, and designed by an expert so that all areas are covered adequately. Next slide. This is one that we've worked kind of hard on for staff. We think it's a really, really good use of the surplus funds, because this is almost like a debt that Jeff talked about. It's a different type of debt, but it's a liability that we have with our employees at the county that absolutely they are due. It's been promised for them, and it is a yearly. You can see right there. So accrued benefits include bank A sick time, which ended in 2012. The sick time before 2012 has a cash value. Sick time after 2012 does not have a cash value. So every year it goes down a little bit. Next one is retention. That ended in 2002. So when people leave, we have to pay out retention. That number goes down for the people eligible every year as well. So that was a big decision the board made in probably right around 2012, I think 2013, to end those. At least bank A and retention ended right away. And then we will always have comp time and vacation time liabilities on the books. We're more concentrated on the bank A and the retention. Those are a finite liability that we have, that once they're theoretically funded or paid off, that we no longer have it. That will relieve, probably, you can see we pay about 4.5 to 6.5 million. It is decreasing a little bit every year because we're on the backside of that. But I would say that if we fund something to fund bank A and retention, we will free up 2 to 2.5 million a year in budgets moving forward. Next slide. So here's our liability that we have on the books. These are OPEB liabilities. They're a debt that we have that the auditors consider. And you can see general fund and enterprise. For the bank A sick time, about 2 million, and we're only talking about the general fund. The enterprise funds still has to fund their own. So general fund is about 2 million of liability on the books for bank A, and about 7 million for retention, for a total of about 9 million. Our recommendation is, we understand there's a liability we have to pay. let's create a new account that we've never done before and start funding it with this so that we never will run short. We have that ability. We're recommending 637,000. That's kind of the balance of what's left, and an automatic sweep that, because as Jeff said, if we've got 2 more months of if we have whatever's left, whether it's $1, 100,000 or $1 million, if additional surplus, it would be swept into this fund. And I will tell you that we have right now in a 24 budget, the finance team has put 4 million in that for all 4 of the liabilities you saw, including comp. So we think that we'll get about 2 million out of that for this, plus the 637 plus whatever's left. And we will have a good course for having this funded. Next slide. We talked about the HVAC. So I was actually corrected yesterday by our facilities management staff. I thought it was 40 years old. It's 50 years old. So our HVAC is 50 years old, and credit to them for keeping it running for 50 years. But at some point, every HVAC system fails. And this one is by far the oldest one. And, it's time to replace it. They bid it out on 11/2. And so all in, we're talking $6.2 million. I'm happy to say that we've figured out a way to fully fund it, no debt, and to have a government agency be able to afford a project like this with no debt is pretty impressive. So the 3 funding sources, chairs recommended on 9/26, the 2.2 out of the surplus. Facilities management will repurpose some of their ARPA money. Some of the ARPA projects came in a little bit lower than expected. So they have 1.5 million to do it. And we're going to do a little bit, we're going to recommend within ARPA, this board previously approved a lot of personnel expenses in ARPA. Some of those are to risk mitigation. We'd like to move those personnel expenses to the ARPA interest where it's completely safe. And the money that we're going to free up in ARPA, the 2.5 million, that will be the balance of what we're doing. It clearly, HVAC clearly meets ARPA. So, and we are ready to do it. It will take a full year. And the reason why it's so important is we can do it as long as it doesn't fail on us. We can do it slowly over time and keep everything up and running. If it completely fails, then we have a catastrophic issue where we're moving everybody out and having to do it. I mean, it takes much shorter, obviously, if we can do it that way, but we have to move all of our employees in 421. So this is our number one capital project we have. Next slide. So here is kind of a breakdown of the entire 18.9 million we talked about. You have the chair's recommendations at 13.4, additional reserves 500, tort liability 500, division of transportation 2 million, road scales 22.5, jail cameras 1.8, and accrued benefits of 637, with the understanding that any additional surplus will be sent to the accrued benefits, and that's the entire 18.9. Next slide. So that was by far the most in-depth. Now we're going to talk about the ARPA funds remaining. Next slide. So where we sit right now, if you recall, we were fortunate enough to receive $179,266,585 from the federal government. This board, through a lot of actions over the past couple of years, we have expended or allocated 177 million, leaving 1.825 million left. We're going to talk about that 1.825 million. Next slide. This one's pretty easy. We have 4 items, technically 5, because we talked about reallocating for the HVAC. So we're going to make that change as well. But for the chair recommended 1.5 million for food insecurity. That is not, we have no idea. It's up to the board to figure out how to allocate that or how to spend that. That's a different item. But we want to say, let's reserve 1.5 million in ARPA for food insecurity. And then the board needs to decide how to best spend that. You just voted, you moved up the one item for the 50,000. So I'm assuming you guys are good with the 50,000 for Metropolitan. That's out of ARPA as well. And then the 2 items that we recommend is we went through, and this is actual, and these do qualify, that we have for finance for their time they're spending doing this. So it's real time every month. We know what the burn rate is. Same with facilities. They're out there, a lot of OT with all the construction projects, care center especially. So this is money that they are expending. That would take us to the entire 1.825 million. Next slide. So you can see what we got the food insecurity, where it's 1.5 million. The board has previously allocated 5.5 million, 2.4 million currently remains unspent out of that 5.5, but we're recommending, like I said, the 1.5. Metropolitan, I think this board knows very well what they do, the 50,000. Next slide, next one. And then the final two would be the staffing for finance and facilities to cover the actual expenses that they are spending for ARPA. Next slide. All right, ARPA interest. This has been our surprise of all of them. So next slide. You can see we never anticipated almost 9.2 million being earned in interest. And a lot of that is, like I said, it is all because of the investments that the treasurer and her staff have done for us. I know the interest rates we're getting on CDs are pretty impressive. We have earned to date 4.1 million. We anticipate another 5 million for a total of 9.1 million. Next slide. So this board has already allocated close to 2 million. We talked about reallocating the ARPA personnel costs to afford the HVAC. So that's a 2.5. And the chair recommended consideration for 3 years of funding for the small nonprofits. The program was very popular this past year. This will fund it fully for $1,050,000 for the next 3 years so that they can plan on the program and plan on the money, and which is very important. It's not like a one-off. They can get the framework lined out, and this board, however you guys want to change that program, you have that. So that equals 5.6 million. We've heard from Safe Harbor that there's a need over there. This funds that. I will say that although we have 3 years there, we recommend only doing 1 year and negotiating the contract to figure out. We'll keep that money there if they need it, however it is, but we want to have negotiations with them. We just don't want to be short on that. We also there's a lot of discussion over the past couple of years about updating and redesigning the Heritage Gallery in 421. This works with the DuPage Historical Museum to do that. And then the one thing we have heard is the need out there for food insecurity. And so you saw the additional 1.5 in ARPA. We're recommending another 1.1 million in food insecurity. The nice thing about this funding is you don't have the time constraints of ARPA. You can let this sit there for a year, 2 years, 5 years until you need it. There's no downside for it sitting here, but reserving it and having that and then letting the board and staff figure out the proper way to spend it. But if we don't reserve it now, it's going to be hard to find the money later. And that's the entire 9.18 million. Next slide. Safe Harbor, we talked about it. You guys know about it. This is their request. Like I said, we're looking for probably 1 year. We'll negotiate and go from there. We are learning more and more about the Safe Harbor program as we go, but I think we actually just visited yesterday, and it's one that we will get before you in short order for at least the first year. Next slide. 421 Heritage Gallery. Like I said, we've been talking about it for a very long time. That exhibit's easily 20, 30 years old, and we can move forward with that design. That's design only, not construction. Next slide. And then here is the final tally for that. So that is pretty much, I think if you go to the next slide, that is everything. Next slide is there. Oh yeah. So the one thing I did want to mention, the one thing we aren't funding is the 479 and 509 parking decks. If you recall, the board allocated money towards a partial payment last year for that. We are making that, we're putting that to good use. We're buying ourselves a couple of years time. This is the only capital need here on campus that we know about that remains. that by the $3 million investment we're putting toward it, we are buying ourselves a couple of years. The decks are, absolutely safe and effective. We recommend pushing off a little bit, but within the next couple of years, we will have to deal with this one. And that is the last slide. I went through a lot of information here, and I know we have a 9:30 meeting.
We have a 9:30, yeah, we have 9:30, we have the reception for the nonprofits, but I have a list of people with questions. I have Member Krajewski, Schwarzy, Zay, and Member LaPlante, Cahill, Guston, and Desart. And before I take the questions, I just want to thank everybody so much for their participation in this process. So many of you brought great ideas and initiatives forward. So really, thank you very much for all your cooperation in this. So with that, Member Krajewski.
I'll limit my questions. Just a couple real quick. On your last thing with ARPA, our last slide, we got $177 million, and over 30% of that ARPA money was spent on projects here on this campus. We continue to build stuff, and I'm not sure we got it all out in the community like we should have, but I think in some of these programs, I'd like to see more of it just go into our reserves until we get better plans on what we're going to be doing with the money. And then we can then move it once we see a plan, but we're moving monies into this pot, to this pot, to this pot for stuff in the future that we don't even have the plan yet. And we don't know how much it's going to cost us, et cetera. So I'd rather see it more sit in reserves. And I can go on to specific ones, but I'm just going to use that as a general overall comment since we're short on time. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Schwarzy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Nick, and all the staff and our chair for doing an outstanding job putting this together. I just want to make a couple comments on the food insecurity. On one of the slides, it said we have 2.4 million of the 5.5 unspent. That's true, but it's a little deceiving because we have $1 million of that earmarked for capital infrastructure projects with the grant process being active right now. We just approved another $700,000 of that. We have 240,000 of that for the DuPage Senior Citizen Council's meal delivery. So that money, even though it hasn't been spent, it's been earmarked for food. I am 100% in favor of adding the ARPA interest 1.14 million to our food insecurity program. We spent close to $4 million on food in the last 14 months, and we're still getting the need for it. There's the individuals in DuPage County who don't know where their next meal is coming from, jumped from 55,000 in 2020 to 85,000 in 2022. So the need is there. Life is stressful, but not having food, not knowing where your next meal is coming from, being able to feed your kids is the number one Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You got to feed your family. So I'm in for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Schwarzy. Member Zay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I said when we had 40 million in surplus last year, we were spending like drunken sailors. Now we have another 18 million. This is a feeding frenzy, plus the 9 million in interest. I mean, we're talking about over $75 million that we're spending, that we're just going out and spending everything. Like Member Krajewski said, we were spending so much on capital. What are we giving back to the residents who are struggling in our county? We're just continue to build stuff. When we talk about reserves, that reserve policy is our own policy. We can change it at any time. And I'm going to say we should change it because this is crazy. Because, I was here when we lowered it because we had less than $70 million in reserve and we had to. Now we have more. Why aren't we saving for a rainy day? Why do we continue to hear this is our number one priority? If I got to hear this is our number one priority for one department over the last 2 years, because guess what? When we fund that, next week, there'll be another number one priority that somebody has. And again, we're getting this thrown at us 2 weeks before we vote on the budget. We should look at it. We should put it in reserves. We change our reserve policy, put it in reserves. Then to take it out of reserves, you need a 2/3 majority of this board to do that. But again, we're going to put in our 2.5 in for housing. And last week, there was something coming before the zoning board. And everybody's like, well, it doesn't have enough low income housing. We're either in or we're not. Why are we putting money in pools? Why are we showing our hand on tort liability saying, let's put extra money in there? Boy, if I'm a lawyer, I'm looking at that right now and going, oh, wow, the county's putting more money in there. How's our lawsuits going? I mean, we should be putting stuff in reserves and thinking about this, just not throwing it out there and going, let's spend. I mean, the capital amounts are staggering. I mean, this money was given to us to help the people. It seems like we're doing is just building more stuff, which is going to cost us more money down the road when we're building this. We should increase our reserve policy and take some time to look at this and then get these things done. Yes, some of them are big. Food insecurity is huge. Support that because that's something that goes back. We abated $5 million in property tax last year. I mean, what are we doing to help our public? And it's not a lot. It's not by this county continuing to spend on different projects. Transportation, we've always been talking about transportation. We put the gas tax in. We're getting money on there. We're getting CPI every year. I mean, again, let's look at projects that we can do down the line that saves the money. I mean, you think $100 million is a lot. Our payroll is $10 to $11 million a week. If something goes bad, that's not a lot of money sitting there. So I think we should, you know, I appreciate staff going on this, but again, this is a lot of information to give, and for us to make a decision on, you know, tens of millions of dollars here down the line, we should take some time and, you know, think about changing our reserve policy, putting that reserves, and then getting a discussion in 2024 for projects that we need, that people need the help with.
Thank you, Member Zay. Member LaPlante?
Thank you. This is more of a comment. I would just like to really piggyback on what you said about the Treasurer's Wise investment and give a very special thanks to Treasurer Gwen Henry for this $9 million from Smart Investments. So this is huge, and I'm really appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Member LaPlante. Let me see what I wrote down here. Member Cahill.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Jeff, for the presentation. I've studied this over for some time now, so I feel pretty comfortable with it, and I'm a very much of a fiscal conservative. The two things that I want to highlight is I really appreciate the additional reserve funding, both the 500,000 and then an additional 500,000. I also was, I think, the one who talked about the accrued benefits funding originally, and I really want to say how important that is and how that is going to help us in the future and save several $1 million going forward. This is the first time we are putting money in an account for accrued benefits funding, so I'm very pleased about that. So I want to say thank you, and I think that we could increase the reserves, absolutely, because it was based on archaic numbers, based on different, you know, total revenues that we had. So I would like to increase the reserves, but I do also think that there are a lot of really important things that we need here. For instance, the sheriff, the jail cameras are essential. The road scales are important. I think the tort liability funding is important to be conservative, let's just look ahead and not be blindsided by anything that can happen in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Cahill, for your comments. I have Member Guston and then Member Desart, Member Ozog, Member Evans, and Member Garcia. So Member Guston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation. Went through it the other night. It's very, very inclusive, and it has a lot of information that I think people really wanted to know where our staff was going with the budget. I really appreciate it. I do also, though, agree with Member Zay and Member Kajewski. I think we might be spending a little too quick on some things, and having an increase in the reserves, I think, is a very smart way of doing this, particularly when we have people in the community that are struggling, and it's increasing the amount of people that are struggling in the community financially, economically. So I think that's a smart direction for us to go in. The other thing, though, we didn't talk about is the potential of if the ARPA money gets rolled back up. I know there's been some conversation on the Hill about that. So maybe it is even better to have more of a reserve just in case something crazy happens there. The other thing we didn't talk about, though, was commerce, was hotels and restaurants, those commerce issues that are struggling still to this day after COVID. Maybe that's a conversation for a later date with respect to reserves. The other thing I really wanted to talk about was the 3.1 million on the cannabis tax. We're using a lot of money for mental health and substance use, particularly at the health department, which is a phenomenal thing. However, my question is, can we take that money and use it towards that initiative also. Not an answer for right now, but that would be something I would.
The answer is yes, you can.
Okay, so we can
you-
earmark that
this board
for
can use their funds for
operations
whatever
or whatever. Okay, great. And that's about it, but thank you, gentlemen, for a great job.
Thank you, Member Guston. Member Desart.
Thank you. Nick, can you explain the general obligation debt page? Why that first item that was, the debt was taken out in 2010 and the original indebtedness was 59 million and the balance is still 59 million?
Yeah, that was an issue. That was Build America bonds that were backloaded. So how it was structured back in 2010, and I don't know why the decision was made. It was interest only. We're just starting to pay principal now.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. You've already answered the HVAC question, liability tort question, jail cameras. So we're going from 223 to 429 in the jail cameras. Would that need an additional staff to monitor if you're doubling the cameras? Do we need to hire more staff for that?
No, there's no more
okay.
staff needed.
The accrued benefits funding, I did have a conversation with Jeff about this. And my consensus is pay it off. Let's just get rid of it. The ARPA closeout, the winter months are coming. People are indoors. You know, I totally agree. I hate to say it with Jim Zay. Let's not spend like drunken sailors. You're spending every single dime of this money. And I want to save some for a rainy day in case COVID comes back, in case we need more money for food insecurity. I don't want to spend I cannot give you a consensus today on what I want to spend on because this is overwhelming and it's frustrating that we're spending every single dime. Let's hold on to some of our money and save it for a rainy day. Just my opinion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Ozog.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I need to object to the reference to drunken sailors. I think we need to look at the fact that this building alone is 50 years old. And it's our responsibility to keep our physical plants in good shape so that people who work here can provide the services that we're supposed to provide. And in my experience in the public sector, you need to build for the next 50 to 70 years. And that's exactly what we're maintaining here with parts of this budget. Also, I'm really pleased as the chair of the transportation department that we are finally getting the regional transportation tax money going to the transportation department. This is the first year in over a decade. Nick, help me out.
Well, last year's first year.
Last year was the first year. We did not use this money for transportation. It was used for public safety. So it's really good to see our priorities going to where the money is supposed to go to. But it's really important that we do what we can now with this money that was not expected. And we are improving our physical plan, as I said, to provide services. And in the future, we may not have the money to do these improvements. Look at this parking structure that definitely needs $15 million worth of work. Again, another 40 to 50-year-old structure. So it's really important that we keep up with this kind of thing. And that's what I think this thoughtful program does. And I want to thank the staff and the chair because I think that the priorities are all very reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ozog. Member Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to concur with Member Ozog's comments. This is the capital outlays. This is making up for deferred maintenance. There's nothing more expensive than something breaking because we've deferred maintaining it. So the HVAC system, how much money is that going to save us in energy costs in the future? And, you know, and if it breaks before we buy the new one, how much money is that going to cost? So I just want to thank Nick and Jeff for putting together a budget that is building resilience into our long-term future, and everything makes sense to me. So thanks. And it looks great.
Thank you, Member Evans. Member Garcia.
Well, thank you to Member Ozog and Member Evans who have said exactly what I wanted to say. I think, well, first of all, first question, how much do we have in reserves again?
103.5, 103.
And that's what percentage again?
42%, I think.
And what are we suggested to be
Well, to Member Zay's point, it's your policy. You guys set it.
Correct.
And you guys can change it anytime. Right now, the policy says a minimum of 25%.
25%. Okay. I'm just trying to get the facts completely clear here. So right now we're over what we have set before, here as the board, before my time, okay. So, we do have some in reserve set aside. I do agree with, member Ozak and member Evans that I think that, we have to be really, forward thinking in terms of what we're doing with our facilities. We're saying that we're not helping, people around the community, but actually they come to our campus and they use our facilities along with the staff. And quite honestly, we've got a 50-year-old, HVAC, which if you've been watching the news lately, if you're looking at those, they're not healthy for anybody who's in here for a long time. So I think this is something that needs to be done. I'm a little frustrated. I'm kind of new on the board still. I'm still only here from 2020, that there was no forward thinking to say, okay, well, how are we going to fund this when this comes up? Because we knew it was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. We knew the care center was going to happen. We knew the parking garages were going to happen. And yet there was no funding put aside or funds. I mean, even with the sheriff's department, with the cameras, there was nothing put aside to actually prepare for the moment of this. I mean, this has been one of the unfortunate benefits of ARPA funds, is that we actually have the money to do it now. So I do think that we have to think about getting ready for the future, since we have not had preparing done before us. And then from now on, we put some money aside so that we have a plan to go forward. So that's what I just want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Garcia. And just to touch on putting money in the reserves a little bit, if we do stockpile our reserves and we want to get that money out, as Member Zay said, it's 2/3 vote, but also that triggers the agencies for our bond rating, and our bond rating some could be affected by taking it out of the reserves. If that is, am I correct on that?
So the higher your reserves are, it's typically a positive for Moody's and Fitch. If you were, if you were below the minimum and you took out of reserves, that's when you could really get hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. And then, okay, Member Galassi.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll keep my comments brief because everyone's kind of touched on them, but I just wanted to add a few things. I wanted to echo the praise of our treasurer, Gwen Henry, for the amazing returns we've gotten on investment. I also wanted to echo Member Cahill's comments about being pleased with the funding for the accrued benefits that are going to be coming due in the future. I do agree with funding the food insecurity, because I do want to get some of the ARPA funds into the community, as mentioned by the back row. And I also do want to agree with Member Zay and Member Krajewski that adding to the reserves is my preference, as opposed to putting it into buckets for places that we may want to fund, but we don't have a plan of how those monies are going to be spent. So I'd rather see the money go into reserves, wait to see the plan, and then decide if we want to move the money from reserves to whatever the fund is. So those are my comments. And thank you both very much for all the work on this. It's very comprehensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Galassi. Member Covert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to congratulate Treasurer Henry on her amazing job. Congratulations on those investments. And I think that my colleagues from both sides of the aisle make really good points. Yes, I agree that we do have to look towards the future and a sustainable infrastructure and, have what we need. But I also agree to possibly putting this for 2024. I don't see an emergency need right now, but this is coming to us 2 weeks before the budget vote. And I would like to have some more money in our reserves. And it's true. I mean, we can have another pandemic. We can, we need to save our money for a rainy day. So I would like to have more time to think about this. I'm not sure why this is coming 2 weeks before the budget vote. It's just too quick for me. If we could hold up on it, discuss this for next year, I'd be okay with that.
I'm going to get, can we get consensus on, do you want to?
So a couple things. First of all,
Yeah, go ahead. Hang on.
I just,
Nick wants-
we just had a presentation on transportation facility. How much were they asking for out of our reserves?
they want to take a loan of
30 million,
20 or 30 million. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So that's coming down the pipeline. So the one thing I would say, by no means did we think we were going to get consensus on everything today. What this was, what you saw was a combination of everything we've heard from this board for the past half year. That's what you see here, in addition to the needs that we've seen. There's a couple things we do need, you know, some kind of emotion, not emotion, but at least a concurrence on. We don't necessarily have to have it here. We can bring this back up under old business and county board today. I know that we have that. So my recommend is we bring it back up. But I will say there are items that are the 2024 budget is absolutely contingent on. We need direction on today. A lot of these that to your point though, the chair brought up those in September. So there's nothing, you guys don't have to vote on anything ARPA interest today. We're simply trying to figure out how to fund it. But as far as the surplus goes, some of that, I would highly recommend that maybe the 421 HVAC is one of the ones that we prioritize. We have a bid, we have a real number, and we have a real need. But as far as the other items, just what is needed for the 24 budget. The other items we can transfer it, we can do whatever, but we can bring it up in old business in county board.
Okay. Okay, Member Colbert, did you have a question?
No, I was just commenting. I agree. There are some pressing things, our food insecurity and a couple of other recommendations that the chair has. So I agree. Maybe if we want to take a consensus on certain prioritized items that we need to take care of now.
We'll do that. We can move it to county board so that we can get into the reception. Okay, Member Eckhoff?
So you're not asking for one mega vote on everything?
No,
No.
This is, like I said, this presentation was everything I've heard, everything Jeff and I have heard over the past 6 months, and just knowing what our needs are. We never anticipated everybody, this is just bringing it up for consideration. There could very well be 3 more presentations, but there are certain things we do need to vote. If this board is if you guys all agree on 1 item or 2 items, that's fine. Let's get concurrence. We can move them forward. If there's items we don't have concurrence, we won't move it forward.
All right, just want to clarify.
Okay, I have Member Tonatori, Member Zay, or Member Krajewski.
I definitely think we should have further discussion. I adamant we should do this under old business. What I would suggest between now and when we do old business, and nobody's wrong, that nobody has a wrong answer for what we're talking about today. But for those people who are more concerned about surplus and reserves than spending, come back in 2 hours and tell me what's not a priority from what we're seeing here.
Sorry.
The jail cameras, the HVAC system. I went through everything. Yeah, everything's a priority. It is. So I want to know what you think we should pull out and put in reserves before we start talking about it.
Yes. Thank you.
And let's talk about housing solution and tort liability, because just because we don't add to tort liability doesn't mean lawyers are going to have a feeding frenzy. You misunderstand that, John.
What's essential for 2024?
Yeah.
Okay, can we wait? Can we
My
please
point
wait
is
till your
that
call
we
done?
need to discuss it in a broader sense, and I think that the time to do it is at the end of.
Thank you, Member Tonatori. Members Krajewski? Oh, your microphone.
We
Brett.
have a plan. We have somebody going forward. You would have everything laid out. We need 5 million for whatever. We need 1 billion for food insecurity. We can do it at that time. And that way this board can have enough information, know exactly what the cost is, and then can do it at the time. So we lose nothing by putting it in reserves. We just gain more time to get more information to make a more intelligent decision. Chair's already given us her budget.
Yeah.
So we already have the budget.
But the budget has, if you don't approve some of the items, like the facilities management, like the stormwater, those are dependent on coming out of the budget. So you've got to approve some today. There has to be some within the budget to be approved.
So her budget that she presented already took into account taking the surplus money
Yes,
put it in there and
absolutely.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Ozog?
Nick, can you come back to us with specific in 2 hours? Can you tell us, or in an hour, can you tell us specifically what is 2024?
Sure, absolutely. I can tell you now, but in 2 hours, I can absolutely do it.
And boom, 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 and we can make those decisions today.
My suggestion is if there's consensus for this board to move forward, it gives staff direction. It'll take us a month, 2 months, 3 months, but giving us direction. If you guys are all in agreement on a certain funding, then we can get consensus, we can move forward. If not, we can bring back.
But if there's like 5 items
Yeah.
that you think we must decide today, that would be
Absolutely.
great. Okay, thank you.
Members A?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't think anybody's saying no to everything. I think we're just saying no to certain things.
Absolutely.
I mean, HVAC, other things, cameras, we understand that. But just to put money in the housing, to put it on top of money that we don't even really have a plan for right now, I think that's what we're saying. Or tort liability that if we needed it, we can go to reserves and get it. I don't think we're saying no to everything. We're saying, give us more information so we can make that. And maybe in 3 months, we make that change. But to do it right before the budget, 2 weeks.
I
is a lot of
completely
time.
anticipated exactly the discussion and that, because there's not a pressure to do all of this. Everything in here is what I've heard from the board. You may not want to move forward on certain things, so be it, that's fine. I mean, everybody is, like you said, everybody's right on this one. If we have consensus, we'll move forward. If not, we won't move forward. Bring it back whenever we have to.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Any old business? Any new business? Member Desart?
Thank you. I've been receiving complaints about the long lines, the unusually long lines at the courthouse. And especially as the temperatures dip here in the fall months. And I reached out to Candace Adams and she said that it's an issue with the sheriff's office. They may not have enough people to man the magnetometers. And I'm just wondering, since we have sheriff's representatives here, I'm wondering what the change is, what's going on over there. If you've gotten complaints about the long lines going into the courthouse, if we're understaffed, what's going on over there? Deputy Chief Billadu.
It's up to you. The sheriff's gonna be here during county board. If you want to have that discussion, then we can have that discussion then. They can research it, or I don't know if it's a short answer.
That's fine.
It's a short answer.
Back.
It's a short answer.
Okay.
This happens every year.
Oh,
We
it does?
simply just don't have staffing right now. We're very short over there. Our office is down like every other county office here, and I just don't have the staffing over
It
there.
happens every year.
This happens every single year.
I don't understand how it
We get
happens
long
every
lines every,
year.
because we're short every year. And we get the lines just get longer. The court calls get longer, but we have to actually get people into the building, but we have to staff the courtroom. So it's a delicate balance between how many people do we put at the front doors to safely staff those doors
Yeah.
versus having deputies in the courtrooms. with the
Is there a
judges.
plan to change things because as it gets colder,
Our-
I mean,
our
somebody.
Our plan is to push to higher.
A
That's what we're trying to
constituent
do.
even sent me a photograph yesterday and it is not good.
I understand. We need more people.
Thank you.
Okay, Member Galassi. Thank you, Member Desart. Member Galassi?
I just wanted to say thank you for your service. I appreciate everything you do. We all understand that you're understaffed and I just really appreciate all the work that the Sheriff's Department does.
Thank you, Member Glass. Okay, Member Garcia. Thank you.
I moved to adjourn.
Okay. Second. All in favor?
Aye.